So I'm out to introduce our first speaker. I'm sorry, I was contractually obligated to show the socks off, so I wanted to make sure everyone saw them. He's the only clothes I could get on short notice. So our first speaker for the day is, our first speakers, I'm sorry, from Brasfield Gorrie, we're having Chris Reeder and Garrett Cleveland, and they're going to be talking about production-based estimating lifecycle. Give a welcome to them.
Good morning.
Morning.
So Garrett and I, my name's Chris Reeder, and I'll let Garrett introduce himself here in a minute, but we're happy to be here, and there's no kidding. I was talking to Melissa Love early this week, and she says, it's like a TED Talk atmosphere, and she's right. This is pretty impressive. So, but yeah, we're going to be talking, we're kicking this thing off with production-based estimating lifecycle, and so exciting topic, and we're going to be going over self-perform and kind of Brasfield Gorrie. We're both at Brasfield Gorrie, and we had a concrete frame project that we're testing out DESTINI for the first time. We've transitioned from Sage estimating within the last couple of years, and so Garrett's going to be giving most of the data on that, and so he kind of led that project with the software side, and so that'll be exciting to hear and to show that to you. Just for introduction, so a little bit about myself. So my name's Chris Reeder. I'm in Greenville, South Carolina, and so I've been at Brasfield Gorrie for about 8 years, and so I've been pre-construction most of my career. Started out early on as a carpenter, trained in carpentry and cabinet making, and then after college went straight into estimating. Supposed to cycle through project management. I actually just took right away to estimating, and I didn't want to go. So I've been a really career estimator for the most part, and I was also that tech guy. You know, it's like the guy, you're an estimator, but you're also the guy that they go to for tech questions. So I was working in estimating, but also working kind of a side job with database management and tech support and things like that. So I did that for several years, and then about 15 years ago, I transitioned to a full-time role, and it was a made-up role at the time where we started this just full-time on Precon Tech. And so I started that 15 years ago and been doing that ever since, and I love it. And so I do that at Brasfield Gorrie, and so it's just anything Precon touches, app-wise, I manage. So we're in a deadline-driven industry, and that's probably part of the issue of why construction is considered a little bit behind in tech. We're very deadline-driven, and we meet our deadlines. And while you're meeting your deadline, you have another deadline that's already been set. So we don't have a whole lot of time to be investigating technology and to just researching and figuring out how we can change our teams. So that's where I come in. So I'm just dedicated to that full time while the people we hire are smart people. And while they do what they do and while they do what we want them to do, they don't have to worry about, you know, side jobs and side hobbies. So I'm in the background working on that. And I call myself an advocate, a mechanic, and a therapist. And so I'm the representative for all things Precon. I'll be liaison between IT, the vendors, our development team. We have an in-house development team that kind of invents different integrations and reports and outputs and things. So I'll be representing Precon for all things that would be needed for support or enhancements or whatever comes up. I'm also a mechanic, so things break and people bring it to the shop and say, hey, this app's making a strange noise, it has a funny smell, and I need you to take it for a test drive. And so I have to go and figure out what's going on with this app. I'm tier 3 support, so I'll directly solve the issue if I can. I'll help with IT, our IT team to solve it. And if that doesn't work, I call Mo. And I say, Mo, this app's not working. It has a funny smell when you run it, and we need you to fix it. So I'll be just there for Precon to help when needed. I'm also a therapist, and I say that because people don't typically call me to say, hey Chris, we're calling just to say everything's working great. So they call me when there's something wrong, right? And so that tends to be the and I understand it. So they call me up and they say, hey, Reader, how's it going? And I say, it's going great. How are you doing? Like, you wouldn't be calling me if you're doing well. So they'll be kind. They'll say, I'm doing great too, but something's wrong, right? So, and sometimes people call me up, and I don't even get that far to say, hey, how's it going? And then they talk through the issue, and by them talking through the issue, they solve it just by talking out loud. And so I'm like, hey, that worked. And I didn't say one word on the phone. And so I'm like, all right, glad to help. So they're just like laying on my therapy couch, and they figure out their own problems. So, so that's a little bit about the role, Precon Tech, Brasfield Gorrie, and a little bit about myself. A lot of you probably didn't hear a thing I said because you can't take your eyes off that one picture. So it's one thing I'm famous for is I have an insane number of kids. And and they all like to smile a lot and stand in front of mountains. And so I think that was a casual photo. Somebody just walked by and snapped it. And yeah. No, it's a blast. So we have, if you count them all, you're going to come up one short. I do have a 13th child, so there's 12 in that picture. And I do have 13 kids. And you can ask me after if I know what causes that, or how do I do it, or what religious affiliation I am, or, you know. But it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. And when things get tough, I just put on orange and chop down trees. And so that's me. I'll hand it over to Garrett, and he can introduce himself.
Yeah, hey, good morning, everybody. My name's Garrett Cleveland, in the Birmingham office for Brasfield since January. Or before that, I was in Atlanta for about 2.5 years. So this is going on my fourth year, or third year, math, of my career with Brasfield Gorrie. That's a picture of me and my wife, Laura, of 8 months. So really fresh to that, but loving it. And so we went to Auburn, met at Auburn. That's where I went to college, and again, like I said, went to Atlanta afterwards to an ops position as a project manager, and then came into the office on the Precon side and have been there ever since. Like Chris said, kind of got approached with a unique opportunity to use this 3D component of DESTINI on a life science building in Birmingham. I just thought it was just another estimate, and now I'm on a stage at the House of Blues, so you know, it works out. And so, yeah, it's been a really cool experience getting to use this software, getting to learn, getting to learn from it. There's definitely things that we're changing as we go, but I've really enjoyed just the components of the 3D capabilities. And so, yeah, self-perform pundit. I think that was either Chris or somebody else's doing. 3 years of experience. I'm an expert. So get your notes out. Yeah.
All right. So what we're going to cover today, and Garrett's going to show you the cool stuff, but we're going to just go over our vision for self-perform at Brasfield Gorrie, and and you'll get into details of this, but self-perform's always been like a big initiative at Brasfield Gorrie all the way back from the founding in 1964. So we want to remain true builders, and so we have a really smart team and very innovative team working with our VDC and our teams within Precon. So we got integration of metrics, model, and DESTINI. Garrett's going to cover that, what that means, and then we're going to get into the importance of metrics and how they help generate our production rates, and all of our crews, and how we do that with component estimating versus activity estimating, activity-based, and we'll get into some of that. And then Garrett's going to sample how we used 3D estimating for a specific project. So our vision for self-perform, so we did, as I mentioned, we transitioned from SAGE estimating. We used that about 20 years and used it pretty well. We had a lot of integrations set up. So really, we were happy with that product, but there was many reasons we needed to change just to move forward with the way tech was going and moving. So we did this transition stage back in 2020. Signed a deal with Beck Tech, and it's a great company to hitch our wagon to, and just great people to work with. And so that's, and as everybody knows, any changes in Precon, it just doesn't, it's not an easy thing, right? Estimators just don't like change. And so somebody, I don't know what it's just in us. We don't like change. I think we just do what we do well, and we want to stick the way we do it. So at the interview, they must say, do you like change? They say, no. All right, you're an estimator. Let's go. And so that's where we're at now. We're in that change management process. And it's gone well. So we have all of our regions using the same technology. They're also, we're using both Sage and Destiny for the transition period. But it's all Destiny going forward. So just legacy projects on Sage. And for the most part, all of our regions at Brasfield Gorrie are component-based estimating, and most of the software tech tends to be geared around component-based estimating. So what I mean by that is whether you have a 12-man crew or you have a 22-man crew or an 8-man crew, it doesn't matter. It's a unit cost. And so we're doing components. This is how much it costs for this component. And you know, we deal with it as a package. So most of the tech is built around that. There are, and then we have activity-based estimating, and then you'll get into products like Innate Estimate or Heavy Bid, HCSS. They're more geared around activity-based estimating. But we're working with Beck Tech, and you know, so they can handle both. And working with them, with our self-perform team, to be able to handle activity-based estimating or component-based. And so it's been a great experience just working with that team and enhancing the product together. And then historical data is huge. Metrics and labor, the labor metrics and productivity, which is what we're going to showcase this morning. And so that data with the right tools, we're set for the future. And I'll hand it over to Garrett.
Yeah, so as Chris was saying, you know, when Mr. Gorrie founded Brasfield Gorrie, he really wanted us to not just be construction managers. He wanted us to have self-perform, you know, aspects of our company. He wanted B&G employees out there doing the work. And so that's kind of what we are doing. That's what we mean when we say self-perform concrete. We have Brasfield Gorrie employees, you know, pouring and finishing concrete, forming, you know, building the formwork. And I think right now, roughly, it's at a $550 million a year mark. And, you know, we're really proud of that and really excited for, you know, as we continue to develop that branch of our company. That's kind of how I've kind of folded under that wing after moving to Birmingham now. So, but with that, we have a lot of data and metrics that we've picked up and carried with us project to project, and using that with, like you said, those component-based pieces, and making sure that, you know, with your unit costs, say you're using a unit cost with your quantities, with self-perform, you know, depending on your wage rates or maybe the location of your project, that can kind of get skewed. But if you focus on your production rates, that's more consistent, it can get more detailed, and it's really, you know, it kind of led to a lot of our success. So here, I know you can't read that table. I'll try and talk you through it. But so that's a concrete frame metrics comparison. And we've built that table in-house, and with all of, you know, all the metrics like I was talking about, and we're able to compare, you know, three jobs at a time, if not more, and looking at, okay, you know, we got the same slab square footage, we've got the same, you know, gross square footage of a, you know, frame top to bottom. You know, maybe you're looking at your foundations, you have similar foundation systems. And so you're able to compare design components, quantity components, and cost metrics at the same time in order to validate, you know, okay, a napkin sketch at a conceptual estimate all the way through a CD drawing estimate. We can kind of look through that process and really validate, you know, how we are pricing this job, how we're looking at this frame, and if we need to kind of expose what we need to tweak through that. And so this is another visual. This is kind of showing phase one, which would be kind of current, or maybe, I guess, old now that we're in the full phase of Destiny. of how we would digest our metrics from the project, get it out of our estimate, and then get it into Power BI, which is kind of our main data visualization tool right now. And so, as you can see, there's a lot of steps in phase one, with that it involves some hard keying here and there in Excel, and with Destiny, we're really excited in how that will feed directly into our data visualization components, and how it integrates really, really well with other softwares. And so our model, like I said, this job that I was on was the life science job in Birmingham. We use the model pretty much exclusively for our quantities. It is validated. We have a VDC group, that virtual design and construction group. They're an in-house group of about 12 to 13, or if not more, in Birmingham alone, and they will get the models from the design teams, do what we call conditioning the model. Basically, they'll just scrub through it, validate everything from a design standpoint with the drawings, make sure they agree, and then from a quantity standpoint as well. But also, what we learned on this job using the 3D takeoff was that, how these items, how these components in the estimate are labeled, within Revit, as you put that into your whitelist into Destiny, was really important, and how you can then filter that, organize it, and start your quantity takeoff process from there. And so really, like I said, the model kind of drives all of this, but it all comes back around after the fact with our metrics, looking at where we started, where we got to, and just really being critical of those stages in between. So these are just some screenshots of the actual estimate itself. And so showing, it was really nice using this as the first one, because all of the columns were the same size. All of the concrete was the same PSI, and the slabs were, it's a big box, it's a lab, so it's not trying to win an architectural award, which is convenient. And so it made it an easy, kind of first go around. And so just to kind of walk you through some of our columns that we have, turned on within the estimate. So you've got, I want to make sure I get this right, you've got labor resource group, and then you've got labor units per man hour, you've got labor productivity, labor duration, and then labor resource duration. Those are the four big things that we really lean on to kind of show us if we're off or we're hitting it on the nose with each of our line items there. And another great thing, just with it, highlighting, selecting those line items will show me in my viewer, the components that are attached to that. And it also serves as a quick little checklist, because like Reader said, we're meeting deadlines, and I'm trying to get things out the door, and it's really helpful. Whereas beforehand, we were exporting into a symbol as a 3D viewer into Excel, and that's how I got all my quantities. And so now all my quantities are in the same spot, and it's quickly, or it's easy to see, hey, I missed this, I need to go back and grab that. Or I don't like how this is organized when, that shouldn't be tagged into that group. It's a really quick and easy QC check at the very end. Yeah, just kind of more of the same, all the columns same size. We typically break them off at the floor, but that's one thing. When we get the model, the architects don't break the columns. They go all the way through the building, and so our VDC will go through and stop it at bottom of slab and start it again at top of slab, which kind of, again, goes into that conditioning aspect that is very helpful.
And Garrett, you had mentioned about assemblies. We had that in we had talked about assemblies in our write-up for this topic, and you said that you weren't able to use assemblies on this project, but your next one you have, and so you have some positive experience with assemblies. Right. Like I said, yeah, definitely doing this one again would have absolutely used assemblies. It was just something, fresh to the software on my end. And so, but with the assemblies, it's very much plug and play, more so than what I was trying to do. And so it'll create your line items, whereas I was creating my line items beforehand and then going back and tagging them to it. Whereas assemblies, you are selecting everything you want to have in that assembly, and then you're plug and play, drag and drop your quantities over, and you're off and running, and you probably save, more than half the time that you would be doing in a normal estimate. That's all we had this morning. I don't know if we have time for questions.
So the first question was how long did it take to condition this model? And then the second question now is combined, how much time was saved? I mean, it was probably, we met for an hour, 2 hours when we got the model, agreed on how we wanted to condition it, and then Jordan had it done in, maybe like a week, 4 days, and then from there, I hopped into the takeoff, and like I said, I did the long way, and I still kind of felt like I breezed through it pretty quickly. And so I feel like I'm easily cutting 2 to 3 days off of our time frame, depending on the job. Like I said, this one is a little bit of a unicorn because all the columns are the same size, all the concrete was the same PSI, the foundations were relatively simple, so it really made it easy to kind of break it up into very intuitive bite-sized pieces to then plug into the estimate. A lot of more jobs, more complicated. You're going to spend more time on the front end trying to organize that and then how you want to take it off. But yeah, I would say to answer the question, probably 2-3 days. Yeah, I mean, we're still kind of getting a feel for it for sure.
How did you develop your production rates, and how do you validate the production rates during the job or after the job with your operations teams?
So there's a brain in Birmingham. His name's Nick Harper, and he's been doing this since he could walk, as how I see it. But no, really, so we use representative crews. And so we try and make sure that when we're building our crews, it is a 1-to-1 ratio. Say you've got 3 carpenters, 3 laborers, with that component, we're not, using that, we know how we're going to reach that metric instead of going 2-to-1, because then it starts throwing off your cost within your labor resource table. I think I said that right. But really, right now, like I said, 3 years in, I kind of defer to Nick for the validation of production. When he's looking at those rates, he's the one that looks at a component and says, hey, that needs, let's see what that looks like. Let's plug 15 square foot an hour, and then look at that, and then go back through our labor analysis, and then knowing, just kind of trusting his gut. He's the wizard in Birmingham for me right now.
And the team will go back to that labor analysis sheet that Garrett had showed earlier, and they're also talking regularly with the subcontractors and just validating that data. So it's a constant just comparison and check for every project.
Yeah, so the question was, what is conditioning, when I was talking about VDC. And so when most of the time architects now, when they publish their drawings, they're built off of a model, and we always ask for that model. Sometimes they're more or less hesitant to give it to us, so we'll take that model in Revit, and VDC will then go through it and scrub it. And like I said, so for an example, the columns in the building. When we first got this model, the columns in the building was one solid column from basement all the way up to the roof level. So there was no breaking of that element. And so you were doubling up your concrete as it passes through the slab, as it passes through beams. And so you have to then go through and make sure you're breaking your columns at that element to make sure you're not doubling up on your formwork, doubling up on your concrete material. And then another example would be, sometimes they name aspects, you name a foundation or like a spread footing can be sometimes named like a slab accidentally. And so when you go through and filter your whitelist using 3D takeoff, it's going to show up as a slab. And so it just makes it cleaner to then go back into Revit, rename that component, and to get it all organized and how you like it. So really it's just massaging in concept. It's massaging the model to get it to how we want it organized from how the architect delivered it to us. And validating quantities at the same time, yeah.
Are you using DESTINI to track your actual productivity, and you're using that as a reference point for future estimates, or are you using another tool or database for the actual productivity?
Yes, that's a good question. So we do a little bit of both, and so to track the productivity, we have the metric sheets that we viewed earlier, but then that'll make its way into the database. And so our database, we intentionally don't put costs in our database, but when it comes to self-perform, we do, and we'll put production rates in the database. And so we'll take a job and update the database using that job and have the latest. But it's not, we don't really rely on the database, so that'll just keep it current and give you a baseline, but we're going through the same process. So whether that productivity rate was right or wrong or zero, we're still going to validate that job by job. Yeah. All right, so that's all time we have. I appreciate the time this morning.
Yeah, thank you all.